Hey there, Terror Talks fans. Are you looking for some other content to listen to? Well, check out our friends at Tales from the Krieps. Join them on a journey into the unexplained, the unnatural, and the unbelievably scary. Every week, they dig through the creepiest and weirdest listener stories, almost too horrifying to be true. This ghoulishly delightful podcast is narrated by two ghoulish girls. Have a story to tell? Questions? Comments? Contact them at tftcsub@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out and let them know the Terror Talk sent you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Terror Talks. My name's Jeremy, and I'll be your host today. On today's episode, we're on episode 19, ladies and gentlemen, and you probably already know what we're talking about by the title of this, but if not, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What do you get when you mix four families, a beach, and M. Night Shyamalan all together? Well, I'll tell you what you get. You get the newest film out there right now, Old. This is a new film, written, directed, all that fun stuff, and even at one point starring the wonderful director M. Night Shyamalan. We just had the privilege of getting to watch it ourselves, and I have to tell you, we were thoroughly impressed. We've got critiques, we've got praises, we've got a little bit of everything. We've got the plot for you. We've got all the information about this film coming to you now. But before we jump into that, we're going to jump into one of our favorite parts of the show, which is our news segment where we tell you about all things going on, horror-related, movie-related, haunt-related, anything to do with Halloween, horror, all that good stuff. That is what we're going to talk about. So, let's get into the news. First up on our news segment, we want to point out to you guys that there are several other thriller horror films, everything that kind of resides in that genre, that are currently being shown in theaters right now, and we want to be sure to let you guys know what they are so you can go and check them out. First up, we have the Forever Purge. That is one of our ones that we are very excited to go check out. It's a sequel to the Purge movies. You've probably seen most, if not all of them. Maybe you've seen none of them. This looks like an interesting one. Basic premise of it is what happens when people decide that they're going to ignore the end of the purge and just keep on purging, keep on killing, keep on committing crimes. That's been a question I think that has lingered on me every time I've watched any of the Purge movies for a while. So I'm actually very excited about that. I'm very excited to see that. And the other film that we want to tell you guys about is the sequel to the movie Escape Room, which stars Taylor Russell and Logan Miller. That was an interesting movie we got to see. I'm not sure if we saw it when it came out or if we saw it after it came out and after it had been out for a while, but we got to watch that film. And it was very interesting. It was very cool. Very survival of the fittest kind of thing. Had to really use your brain when you watched it. And to be the characters in there, you had to use your brain too, because you were just always kind of curious what was going to happen next and how they were going to get out of this one and that kind of thing. But they have a sequel to that film coming out called Escape Room Tournament of Champions. I've seen the trailer for it. We're very excited. We can't wait to get to see that one so we can talk about it and give you guys our thoughts on that. And then we have some films coming soon to theaters. I haven't really looked to see what these are about yet, so I really don't know, but these are both in the horror genre. And these will be coming out next week. So if you're listening to this episode on the day that we're releasing it, which should be August 3rd, August 4th, one of those days, these two movies will be coming out next week, and they are The Stairs and Don't Breathe 2, both of which we're going to check out. Hopefully before we go see Don't Breathe 2, we get a chance to see Don't Breathe 1, because I'm very curious about that. Up next on our news segment, we have some information coming out of Mad World Haunted Attractions. So this is for all you haunted house junkies out there like us. They have announced a new attraction. That's right, a new attraction that's going to be taking place at their grounds, if you will. Everyone knows they have the big walk-through attraction, the trail, all that fun stuff. We were privileged enough to attend that last year. Go check out our episode on episode 2. Or don't if you don't want to. But we were very privileged to go out there this past year and check it out, and we are going to try and make it out there again this year, especially with this new announcement. They are going to have a new Ghost Town mini golf course that will be showcased at their annual haunt. The course is going to be a full 18 holes, complete full 18 holes. It will be completely themed to various scenes. From what we're gathering from images and what they have told us, some holes will be blacklit, so there'll be neon lighting and all that. And then some will have some special type of interactivity. I don't know what that means. I would imagine that probably means if you hit the ball into something, then it triggers something else maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Rube Goldberg kind of thing. Who knows? So be sure to check that out. And also, we just want to go ahead and mention this again, that Mad World Haunted Attractions will officially open. That's right, officially open for their first night of operations on September 10th. That is September 10th. Hopefully we will get to go out there and experience this. We are definitely going to try. And so you want to check that out. And also don't forget that on August 13th, they will have a special 50% off on all their pre-sale tickets for this season. So take advantage of that while you can. Finally, Spirit Halloween celebrated their grand opening of their flagship store in New Jersey, where they had a wide variety of Halloween costumes, decor, makeup, anything you want to see Halloween, they had it. It was there on display. It was there to be purchased. It was great. Everybody showed up. The mayor showed up. It was a fantastic thing. And they also had their new line of animatronics there as well. But we're not going to be talking too much about that today because we actually have an episode coming up very soon where we will be breaking down everything that happened that day, the event, as well as the animatronics that they have released for their 2021 lineup. So just be on the lookout for that episode. It should be coming very soon. It's in the editing stages, and we're working on all that as we speak. But that is going to do it for us here on the news. So, let's get on with the show now. We're going to be talking about the M. Night Shyamalan film, Old. Old is a 2021 American thriller film written, directed, and produced by M. Night Shyamalan. It is based on the French-language Swiss graphic novel Sandcastle by Pierre Oscar Levy and Friedrich Peters. The film features an ensemble cast consisting of Gael Garcia Bernal, Vicky Krieps, Rufus Sewell, Alex Wolff, Thomasin McKenzie, Abbey, Nikki Amuka-Bird, Ken Leung, Eliza Scanlen, Pierre, Embeth Davids, and Eamon Elliott. The plot follows a group of people who find themselves aging rapidly on a secluded beach. And that's literally what that film is now. It's not all you see. There are some other great stuff happening in that film. But the plot doesn't get any simpler than that. There is no complex, secret or plot or anything like that. It is simply, we follow a group of people on a secluded beach. So that's what you get. Shyamalan decided to adapt Sandcastle into a film after receiving it as a Father's Day gift. The then untitled project was announced in September 2019, with the filmmaker revealing a partnership with Universal Pictures. The following year, filming took place in the Dominican Republic for 3 months during the COVID-19 pandemic with cinematographer Michael Gilakis. I probably butchered that name, and I'm sorry if you're listening. Old premiered at Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York City on July 19, 2021. The film was theatrically released in the United States on July 23rd and has grossed $48.9 million worldwide against an $18 million budget. It received critical praise for its cinematography and scenery, but criticism for its screenplay and overall execution. Its premise, themes, and twist ending received a divided response. So all those things we're going to dive into and discuss on the show. So this is Old. It was directed, written, and produced by none other than M. Night Shyamalan. So let's just dive right in. So this film ran about 108 minutes, so that's just shy of 2 hours. And right out the gate, before we even talk about anything, that was one of my big ticket issues, and I think a lot of other people can kind of agree with me on this. It was a 2-hour movie about people who aged on a beach. That being said, it had some pros and cons to it in that regard of it being as long as it was. The pro was it kept you on your toes, and it kept you, like for me, when I see a movie, I know how long the movie is typically, and that will allow me to go, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what we're going to see next. And it helps me to just keep somewhat engaged during the film, especially if it's one that I'm just not at all interested in. At least if it's something like 2 hours long, it gives me something to look forward to. And that was kind of how this worked, because honestly, in terms of the overall plot development, there was a lot of parts where it just kind of drug on. And that, I think, is part of the reason there are some critiques on the screenplay, because there's a lot of repetitiveness in certain lines. Like, what do we do? 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 Like, you got that so much in this film. And so much just repetition. And, Mom, I'm scared. Mom, I'm scared. Dad, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. Yeah, at this point, we get it. You're scared. Like, we're not scared because we're the audience, but we're trying to figure out what's going on. And that right there, to me, almost seemed like a little bit of lazy writing. That being said, perhaps the book is kind of written in that form. And so I can't blame M. Night Shyamalan so much if the book is kind of like that and it's taken directly from the book. So that kind of, skews things a little bit to a degree. But that was one of the main problems with it being as long as it was there was just a lot of just kind of dry stuff. And enough to almost make you feel like you were kind of mad too. But then at the same time, it kind of aided with... It felt like you were kind of sitting there in that time vortex with them, wondering what was going on. But, yeah. So, that's my first critique right out the gate, is a nearly 2-hour movie. But I will say I thought the ending made it worth it, but we're not going to talk about that just yet. So, married couple Guy and Prisca. Guy is played by Gael, Garcia, Bernal, and Prisca is played by Vicky Krieps. Travel to a tropical resort with their young children, Maddox and Trent, as a final family vacation before they divorce. Before we go any further, I want to clarify some things. So, Maddox and Trent, they are their children, but they are not played by any one person because of the way the film is set up and created. They go through the aging process, and because of this, there are different actors playing each of them. Trent is played by Alex Wolff and Amun Elliott. Then Nolan River and Luca Faustino Rodriguez portray the 6 and 11-year-old versions of him. So Alex Wolff and Amun Elliott are the much older versions once he gets to be like young adult, like 20s, I guess. And then Amun is once he's like way older, like I think in his 50s. And then Maddox is played by Thomasin McKenzie and Embeth Davids. And then Alexa Swinton portrays the 11-year-old version of her. So they go on this family vacation, and they're there. And at first glance, when you get there, it does seem like a very ritzy kind of place. And things seem great. But, we know, as the viewer, we know what's going to happen. And what's interesting is they don't really throw in your face too much that the parents are having any type of issues. In fact, they don't even really say that they're going to divorce. They mention separation, but they don't say divorce. And on top of that, they mention some stuff about some medical condition, and then there's an argument at one point. But this is all before they even get into the beach part. So everything is very kind of up in the air. We don't really even know these minor details. But going on the advice of the resort's manager, the family visits a secluded beach, also occupied by 3 additional parties. Rapper Mid-Size Sedan, played by Pierre, and a female companion, Surgeon Charles, Rufus, who is played by Rufus Sewell, and his wife Crystal, who's played by Abbey Lee, and their young daughter Kara. Let's talk about Kara for a moment as well. So Kara is played by Eliza Scanlen when she grows up and is a little bit older. But then Kyle Bailey and Micaiah Fisher portray 6-year-old and 11-year-old Kara. So again, has to do with the whole aging process and all of that. And then they're also joined by Charles's mother, Agnes, who's played by Kathleen Shaflant. And then the other party is Jaron and Patricia. Jaron is played by Ken Leung. He is like one of my favorite actors because he was in a TV show that I used to watch called The Night Shift, and I was gutted when they took it off the air, but I loved that show. And then Patricia is played by Nikki Amuka-Bird. And so this is a close-knit husband and wife duo, and they are like perfect together. Earlier on in the film, we see Patricia, the wife. She actually has a seizure, but everything pretty much goes fine after that. Tragedy strikes the group's vacation when the drowned body of Mid-Size Sedan's companion is discovered, which is followed by Agnes's suddenly dying. Strange events soon occur, including the 3 children becoming teenagers. The group realizes that the beach is causing them to age 1 year every 30 minutes, deteriorating their health. They also notice that at least one member of each family has an underlying medical condition. Efforts to leave result in the members of the group blacking out and waking up on the beach. So this is where the big mystery and fun kind of comes in, because things get really weird really quick, but like I said, there's not a whole lot to it. So Mid-Size Sedan, the rapper, he had a female companion with him, but she washes up dead. Of course, everybody is quick to blame him because he's the only one there. And what's weird is he's got a nosebleed, but it's just out of the blue. Like, nobody can seem to figure out why he has this mysterious nosebleed. We don't really get any information on that. But that happens with him. And the doctor, he is kind of in a weird place, but he keeps trying to kill Mid-Size Sedan. Like, he's got his knife, and he goes to kill him several times. At one point, he actually cuts him on the cheek. And when he does this, his skin heals immediately because of how everything is sped up on this island. So things get really complicated as the kids are growing and growing and growing. And of course, everyone's freaking out. And this is where you get the repetition of dialogue and such happening, because a lot of people are just like, oh my God, you're now this age, or oh my God, what's happening to you? It just like literally it just keeps going. It's like, what do I do? And like they said, they try to leave, but they cannot. They actually are going through the cavern in which they came in, and what's interesting is every time they do that, they black out. So it's very, very strange that happens, and nobody can seem to figure out why. And like it said, their health is also deteriorating. So you've got people like the grandma. Her heart, I believe, is what gave out on her, and she just died right there. I think at this point, right now, that's the only health issue we see, but more do happen as we go. Further tragedy occurs when the maturing Kara rapidly gives birth, only for the baby to quickly die from the beach's effects. Amid the group struggling to escape the beach, Trent and Maddox discover the notebook of a previous traveler, along with indications of them being watched. The attempts to leave grow tenser when Charles's worsening schizophrenia causes him to kill Mid-Size Sedan. Jaron drowns and Kara falls to her death as they look for a way off, while Patricia and Crystal die from their respective conditions of epilepsy and hypoglycemia. becoming exasperated. Charles eventually attacks Guy at night in a schizophrenic episode, but Priska slashes him with a rusted knife, instigating a fatal infection as the night winds down and elderly Guy and Priska make amends before dying moments apart from each other. So this part of the film, this is where everything kind of takes a big turn and things get crazy. So first off, let's talk about Kara giving birth. So I was very, very confused when it happened, and then I was just like, okay, so that makes sense. Because when I saw this in the previews, I kept wondering, like, okay, I understand that everything is sped up here. I get that. But what I didn't understand was how a baby could just basically appear. And so I thought that this had to be supernatural natural means and such. That's what I thought. I didn't really understand. When I was watching the movie, I'm like, okay, now I get it. So at one point, everybody else is away, and they're checking on the whole issue that's happening with people blacking out when they go through the tunnel and all that. But the kids are still hanging out on the beach, or at least those two kids are, Kara and Trent. Well, Kara and Trent are now basically teenagers, almost full adults, and they're laying in a tent that is closed off. And what's interesting is as they're laying there, they mention that thoughts are just growing in their head. They're just getting thoughts, random thoughts. And so my understanding of what happens is they got a lot of thoughts, and basically, since they were now technically in their 20s, they basically did the deed and had a kid because of it. And I thought, okay, so that's an interesting take on it. And I'm like, okay, weird. So at first I wasn't sure, but then everybody started scolding him and telling him what he did. And he's like, oh, we were just playing. And it's like, no, you were not just playing. So that's kind of interesting that's how things went down. And on top of that, it definitely opens up some light to the rest of the story and how everything is kind of falling into place. So the baby does die very, very quickly on this beach because nobody gives it attention. And because everything is sped up so quickly, the baby just dies within like seconds. Like you hear the crying, and then it's gone. And I gotta tell you, the guy who did the sound on this film, the way he did it was so perfect, because I was sitting there in the room and I thought there was an actual baby in the theater with me. And I'm sure that's a mixture of both the sound system that's being used and the sound mixing. But, I mean, it was really like crystal clear. I was like, dang, that's pretty interesting. So like they said, Trent and Maddox discover a notebook of a previous traveler. So we know that there have been other people on this beach, and it turns out this guy is actually very smart with things, so he has figured something out. He understands that the way this beach works is it's only this beach that speeds up the aging process. And what I thought was so interesting about that was I expected this beach to be something created by the government, the resort people. You know, that's what I thought. I did not expect, any logical explanation, if you will. And they actually present you with a very logical explanation as to why everything kind of happens that way, and it has to do with the magnetic fields and such. So I think that's very interesting that they were able to give you a logical explanation to what was going on, and that ties into some things that we're going to find out later, partly with the big twist ending. So they find this information out, and they're trying to figure out, well, what can we do to get off? And so they keep trying to figure that out. Charles, who is the doctor, so what you have to understand is earlier in the film, he had to cut a tumor out of the mom, Priska, because she had a tumor there, and that apparently was the cause of not the cause of the divorce, but that was part of the reason for them wanting to get the divorce, because they didn't want the kids to suffer and all that. But so we finally find out that she has a tumor. Well, he goes to cut it out because he's a doctor, but of course when he makes the incision, it heals up very quickly because that's the way it works on this island. Right before he cuts it, he asks if anybody has seen a film with two characters or something. And all his family are just like, oh no, this is not the time, not right now, not right now. And even his daughter says something to the degree of, doesn't mom have you sit down when you start to act like this? And so we know instantly he's got a mental issue. And it turns out it is schizophrenia. And so this causes him to just straight up go and kill mid-sized sedan. And at that point, they take the knife away from him and basically kind of put him in seclusion like a kid. And things only get worse from there. So Jaren decides he's going to swim out into the ocean to see if he can basically swim around. And I can just tell you right off the bat, we knew this wasn't going to work because he passes out as well. And ends up dying because he passed out in the ocean. So that's the other thing about the whole passing out thing. Jaren figured it out, why the passing out was happening. And what it is because their cells were rapidly growing, or aging, I should say, they could not move quickly out of there. So it's kind of like when you swim to the surface of water, like if you're underwater and you try to swim to the surface really quick, you get a lot of pressure in your head. This is the same thing. Their cells had to basically adjust to where they were, and they were not able to do that, and so that's what caused the blacking out. So he was able to figure that out before he died. So he dies, and then Kara tries to climb up the side of the rocks. So there's this big rock wall kind of surrounding everything. And so she tries to climb to the top, thinking if she gets to the top, she can climb over and get out of there. Well, of course, it doesn't work because she blacks out up there and she falls to her death. Then we have Patricia and Crystal. So Patricia has epilepsy, and that basically just ends her life pretty quick. She falls down to the ground and just starts having a seizure, and we saw the seizure earlier, so we're like, okay, well, they just leave her be, she'll be okay. This time is not the case. She succumbs to the epilepsy, and that's it. She dies. And then Crystal, the other wife, she has a condition called hypocalcemia, which I guess requires her to have calcium in her at all times. Because earlier in the film, you hear her ask somebody, hey, does this have calcium in it? I have to have my calcium. And she's very, very serious about that calcium thing. And so now we see why here at the end of the film, because she dies because, well, she didn't have her calcium. So finally, at the nighttime there, the Charles, schizophrenic man, tries to attack Guy. So at the same time while this is happening, Priska, her ears are failing her, so she's losing her hearing because they're getting older. And then Guy's vision is actually starting to blur, so he can't see anything. Well, here comes Charles, the schizophrenic guy, trying to attack and whatnot. And so Guy is trying to fight him off, and so he just keeps slicing him, but obviously it doesn't work. So Charles is just slicing Guy, and this just keeps healing back up, and then Priska gets in front of him and tries to, kind of shield him as well, and it's just doing that same thing. So they make the kids go hide, which this is where the kids actually watch Crystal die from her hypocalcemia. And what happens there is she's in a cave, crawling to him, and she's got this big hump, and she, her body is literally contortioning and stuff. It looks horrible, and it literally is something out of a horror movie. If this came crawling at me, I would be scared to death. It would scare me so bad. And so out there on the beach, Guy and Priska are still fighting Charles. Well, eventually Priska grabs a rusty knife that's on the beach, and she cuts his arm, which puts an infection all through his bloodstream and kills him. So they find a way to kind of use that whole thing to their advantage. And so then the final ending here, or not the final ending, but the final hoorah for this couple is her hearing's getting worse, and they're all sitting there, and they're having a good time. And one thing I should mention is the beginning of the film. I loved this kind of foreshadowing. I thought this was really neat. They were sitting in a car listening to the music, and the youngest girl was singing to the mom. Well, the mom says to her, I can't wait to hear your voice when you're older. And I'm just like, oh, like I got real excited there, because I was like, that's a really cool way to kind of say, well, here's what's to come, and to get ready. And so when they're on the beach that night, when it's just the four of them left, and they're not necessarily safe, but they are, just kind of chilling out, she actually sings to her, and that's a real kind of heartwarming moment. Well, then the dad guy, he starts to lose his memory. He doesn't remember what him and his wife were fighting about, and he dies of old age right there. And then Priska gets up to walk away, and she falls back, and she dies. So this leaves Maddox and Trent alone, with only the now adult Maddox and Trent remaining by the next morning. Trent revisits a secret message given to him by the manager's nephew, which he deduces is connected to an underwater coral passage, suspecting that the passage will allow him and Maddox to not lose consciousness while leaving the beach. He and his sister start swimming through the coral. After they fail to emerge from the water, a resort employee monitoring them reports that the entire group has died. So you got to remember, we see throughout the film, from the beachgoer's perspective, there is a shimmer happening in the distance, and we are able to eventually conclude that this is the people watching. We don't know who the people are at this point, but we find out that they are watching them, and I guess trying to see what's going to happen. Well, he sees them down on the beach, and they find a note, and for some reason, I don't understand how Trent just remembered this, but while they're sitting there making a sandcastle, because at this point they've just kind of given up on getting off that beach, he decides to go look at a undeciphered letter from his friend that he met at the resort, who happens to be the resort owner's nephew. Well, he deciphers it, and it says, "My uncle doesn't like the coral." And so, boom, that's their ticket out of there, and they go to swim, but Maddox gets caught on something, gets caught on a piece of coral, and that's what makes them fail to come up, but we don't realize that yet. So now we get to the big twist ending. It is revealed that the resort is a front for a research team conducting clinical trials of new medical drugs, with guests suffering from conditions being used as unwitting test subjects. Since the beach accelerates the lives of the guests, the researchers have been able to complete the drug's lifetime trials within a day. The researchers move forward with luring a new group to the beach, but are interrupted by the arrival of Trent and Maddox, who survived their underwater swim. Using the notebook as evidence of several guests going missing, the siblings are able to bring the police to the resort. Once the researchers are arrested, Trent and Maddox head home to live with their aunt, uncertain of their future. So this big twist ending, I think the whole time I was sitting there in the theater, I was like, okay, it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. There's got to be a twist. There's got to be a twist. There's got to be a twist. And I was waiting for it. And I kept looking at the clock to see how much time was left. I'm like, okay, there's enough time for something to happen, but I didn't know what. So we do see this pharmaceutical company, basically, who's working on testing drugs, and they literally, it's interesting because they do take a moment to mourn the deaths of all these people. So it makes me wonder, are they like really the worst people in the world? And then I have to slap myself and go, yes, they're the worst people in the world. They're killing people knowingly. But they're kind of using this beach to their sick advantage. And they literally move forward with getting a new group in there. And it's so interesting because the young nephew of the owner of the resort, he is told by his uncle, hey, don't worry about those people, you'll make new friends. And he basically lied to him and told him, hey, they went home. They didn't go home, they died. Or did they? So then, of course, what I love this part actually made me like really happy, because I love M. Night Shyamalan's use of foreshadowing in a way. At the beginning of the movie, when they were playing on the beach, Maddox and Trent were running around. Well, Maddox wasn't, but Trent was running around with his buddy and going up to people saying, "Hey, what's your name and what's your occupation?" And then he would run off after he told him. Well, at this point in the movie, they've appeared back at the resort, and he remembered. Now, granted, it was just a day ago, but at the same time, it has something to do with him having like a photographic memory of sorts. But he finds a guy who happened to be a policeman, and that's who they show this journal with lists and lists and lists of names of people who've gone missing on the beach. And that's what they used to get them. And just before 2 more people can get out of a van and get ready to set foot in the resort, Trent and Maddox happen to set foot right in the room at the right time to stop the whole thing. And then we actually get to see what happened to them underwater. Why were they delayed coming up? And it turns out that it just took them a little bit longer to get unattached from the piece of coral that was latched on the Maddox. So it wasn't anything really that bad. They were able to get out of there. So if that guy had stuck around a few more minutes, he'd have seen that they survived. Well, then Trent actually sees the young nephew, and the young nephew kind of looks at him, and I think he recognizes him sort of. But then Trent holds the note up to him, and he realizes who it is, so he goes and checks it out, and it's like, oh, interesting. And so the movie ends with a big hoorah with them on a helicopter, Maddox and Trent with the cop, and he informs them that everybody's going to be arrested, and asks them how their aunt is taking things. And I love this line. He's like, well, how would you feel if a 50-year-old called you saying he was your 6-year-old nephew? And it's just kind of like, well, touche. And that's the end of the movie. They ride off into the sunset in the chopper. So it is certainly an interesting movie. I think it definitely screws with your head a little bit in terms of you're kind of wondering, what's going to happen next? Why are these people dying? It makes you ask a lot of questions, but I kind of love that whole logical explanation by the end too, because it makes you kind of go, okay, so that's why this happened. And that's a very rare thing in thrillers or horror movies or anything like that. You don't see that often. Usually they will just kind of be like, hey, it happened because it happened, and they don't give you much reasoning for it. So I like that they were able to do that with this film. We're going to take a real quick break, but we'll be right back. Hey there, Terror Talk fans. Are you looking for a new way to let your voice be heard? If so, check out our friends at Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for creating your very own podcast. They offer editing tools to create your podcast, which include your audio, listener audio, unique transitions, and custom advertisements. In addition, they'll also help you distribute your podcast to other listener sources, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. With this unique app, you also have the chance to get paid for your podcast by simply placing ads for various sponsors in your videos. Best part of it all? It is 100% free. Anchor does all the work for you and makes podcasting as simple as turning on a light. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM. Whether you're new to podcasting, doing it as a hobby, or hosting a professional show, Anchor is the place for you. And we're back on episode 19 of the Terror Talks. We're talking about M. Night Shyamalan's new film, Old. Before the break, we ran through the plot of the movie. We talked about it all and shared a couple little tidbits here and there and some thoughts and whatnot. Now we want to talk ever so briefly about the theme and the production of this film. So when NME's Beth Webb asked about the different themes tackled in Old, Shyamalan responded, "It's definitely about our relationship to time and, in my opinion, our dysfunctional relationship to time that we all have. until we're forced to examine it, whether it's a pandemic or the factors that are on the situation for these characters, that they're trapped on this beach and they have to reflect on their relationship to time. You see some characters unable to navigate this, and then some characters find peace. Why did they find peace, and how did they find peace in the midst of all of this chaos? So there's this conversation about that, the one that I'm having of myself with the time. I think that's really, really neat that they are able to do that, and that is the kind of overall theme of this film. I love that, because it's true. As you're sitting there, it really does make you think, like, wow, how much time do I really have? And in terms of, like, that film, you really don't know. The characters don't know. They are dumbfounded at the idea that, we'll be dead in an hour. And that's the thing, is you can basically go an entire, 60-some years of your life in a day on that island or on that beach. And so that's very interesting, and it definitely does give you some time to reflect, but it's so awesome because it's actually kind of alluded to in the film itself when Priska and Maddox are having a conversation. Of course, Priska's having this conversation with a much older Maddox, who is now an adult, and she tells her about how she was cheating on her father, she was planning to, saying that there was someone else and all that. And so it gets very deep. And so Maddox starts to walk away, and Priska's like, don't go away. And she's like, I just need some time. Well, then Priska says to Maddox, you don't have that. And I think that's such a beautiful line, and I thought that was very beautifully done by M. Night, because it's true, they don't have time, and it really kind of awakens us to this idea of how, as humans, we can be so angry about something and be going through a argument with somebody, and then, basically it tells you to not dwell on such things, and to not take too long dwelling on things like that. And that's what I love about this film, is that it's able to basically say that in this very horrific way, but he did a great job with that. We also have here, at the 2021 Tribeca Film Festival, Shyamalan said that the film's focus on aging reminded him of his father, who has dementia, and his children as he watches them grow up. During the event, Alex Wolff compared the film to the COVID-19 pandemic. Out of COVID, it feels like time just stopped, and that's what this movie's literally about. At the film's premiere, Wolff was asked for what his interpretation of the film was, and he said it's an allegorical existential sort of meditation on getting older. Other cast members chimed in. Nikki and Amuka-Bird said the film was about not taking nature for granted. Gael Garcia Bernal said it was about questioning how time travels differently for other people. And Vicky Krieps found that it was about love and family and all these things that are much stronger than any fears. The fear of aging and the fear of death. And these are all true. I love this. This is so awesome that they were able to basically throw in this really deep meaning to what really is being called a thriller horror film right now. But it's one that teaches a lesson, and you don't get that very often with films like this. So I think that's really cool that they did that. You have this idea of time and how it's different for everybody. And, that was one of the things I said. Each character, we don't know when they're going to drop. We don't know what the cause of them dropping is going to be. And so that's an interesting thing that we get to witness. And then, of course, there's love and family and all these things that, they have to be stronger than the fears. And that's one thing that, we see a lot of, because we realize that at the end there, particularly, the four are sitting there on the beach and just enjoying quality time together. And it's like, yeah, don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, we have this love as a family. And then, of course, not taking anything for granted. And that's so, so true as well. Because you never know when one day it's going to be gone. So these are all very true themes of this film. And I think, like I said, M. Night did a fabulous job presenting these. I do want to get a little bit into the production of this film, and then after that, kind of just give our final thoughts on everything. So in September 2019, Universal Pictures announced its plan to distribute 2 then untitled independently financed thriller films written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. So this means that we have another M. Night Shyamalan movie coming up soon, I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. In a statement, Universal Pictures president Peter Kramer said that these projects contained highly original stories, while Shyamalan added, "There are wonderful studios out there, but Universal has made it a mandate to release original films. They are the best at finding an audience for new stories with unexpected tones. I believe original films are crucial to the longevity of the theatrical experience." And I love that he's using Universal Pictures, because I love Universal Studios. Anyone who knows me or watches the show knows our love for Universal. And I'm really glad that they got their hands on this one. In fact, when the film started, I was very excited when I saw the Universal logo pop up. I went, yes, Universal's got it. And one thing that I do want to say, and I say this anytime we go and see a horror film or something of that degree, I'm kind of curious if Universal maybe one day will try and maybe make a Horror Nights house out of this movie, possibly. I don't know how that could be done, but, you know, they did the film Us at one point, and that's not so much a horror movie as a psychological thriller, and there's no, like, monster or anything in it. You know, they can do thrillers with their mazes, so I'd be very interested to see if there was a way that this could be incorporated, especially, like I said earlier, with the lady who dies of the hypocalcemia. Like, she looked creepy the way she was crawling at you. So I think that might be interesting for them to play with. Who knows? Maybe next year, maybe in a couple years, we'll see it. In May 2020, Eliza Scanlen, Thomasin McKenzie, Pierre, Alex Wolff, and Vicky Krieps entered negotiations to star. That June, they all joined the cast alongside Abbey Lee, Nikki Amuka-Bird, and Leung. In July, it was reported that Shyamalan, Mark Beinstock, and Ashwin Rajan would produce the project through Perfect World Pictures and Blinding Edge Pictures, with Gael Garcia Bernal also being cast. In August, Rufus Sewell, Beth Davids, and Eamon Elliott were all announced as part of the ensemble cast. On September 26, 2020, principal photography began in the Dominican Republic, and to celebrate, Shyamalan revealed the film's title and published its first promotional release poster. See, I did not ever see that until, I literally just heard about this film, a month ago when I saw a commercial for it, or not a commercial, a trailer for it, while seeing another film. So I never saw any of this before, and so I'm really shocked by that. And then I'm even more shocked that they were able to actually be filming in 2020, because even by September, things were still kind of being kept on lockdown and such. So I didn't think many people were doing things like this. So good on them for being able to find a way to make it happen. That same day, Collider reported that the film was an adaptation of Sandcastle, the French graphic novel by Swiss authors Pierre Oscar Levy and Frédéric Peters, which Shyamalan had received as a collective Father's Day gift from his 3 daughters in 2017. I did not know going into it that the film was based on a story. I mean, I knew going to see it tonight, but it's because I heard something about it a couple weeks ago, when I guess I went to look something up about it, and one of the search results had to do with Sandcastle, and I was like, what is this? And so I found out it was based on a book. So that I was a little upset when I found that out, because I was like, oh, so it's not entirely original. But at the same time, I'm like, it's okay. I'm willing to, just go with it, and I'm glad I did. Old marks the first film of Shyamalan's career to have no shooting take place around his hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I didn't know that he had a lot of filming take place there. With an $18 million budget, filming took place during the COVID-19 pandemic, with cinematographer Michael Giolakis using 35mm film, and concluded on November 15, 2020. After filming wrapped, Shyamalan said Old was the first film to be shot during the pandemic in the Dominican Republic, and that throughout the shoot, no one tested positive for the virus, as he paid for the production crew's stay at a hotel for 10 weeks. So I just want to give some applause there, because that is awesome that 10 weeks they were all around each other filming this movie and nobody tested positive for the virus. Like, that is awesome. I really think that's really, really cool. Old was inspired by films created during the Australian New Wave, including Walkabout and Picnic at Hanging Rock, along with The Exterminating Angel, Kuroniko, Jaws, and The Twilight Zone. To create a claustrophobic feeling, Shyamalan employed several filming techniques from Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon and Ran. As a result, Old was mostly filmed in a single location, the Playa El Valle Beach, located between two mountains on the north coast of Santa Barbara de Samana. Additional filming took place at Pinewood Dominican Republic Studios in Juan Dolio and in several locations around Samana. To capture footage of the surrounding nature, Shyamalan's daughter Ishana served as the film's second unit director. His other daughter, Salika Shyamalan, wrote an original song for the film titled Remain that was inspired by U2's With or Without You, and the topic of marriage vows used to highlight the relationship between Guy and Priska and the love that exists between them. How about that, everybody? I did not know any of this about that. I did not realize that Shyamalan's other daughter was a film director like him, and then on top of that, his other daughter wrote a song for this. Like, that's awesome. This literally became a family affair. And it's so fitting because it's, that's one of the themes that they talk about with this film. Several cast members were called Shyamalan using storyboards to frame every shot in the film. Ishana Shyamalan described her father's choice as a very prescribed and programmatic approach, while Wolff said the director had such precision in terms of what age he wanted you to be and where he wanted you to be at that age. Night would just guide you where you needed to be emotionally, and then it would happen naturally. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Wolff said he and McKenzie were the first actors to be cast after submitting audition tapes, and recalled passing out during the filming of the pregnancy scene due to high temperatures. During post-production, editing was completed by Brett M. Reed, and the film score was composed by Trevor Gurekis and released by Backlot Music on July 23rd, 2021. So when the film came out, it did have some mixed positive and negative reviews. And the big one that we see is a lot of people were very critical of the screenplay, so that's the one that we actually mentioned as well. But all in all, it was a very, very well put together film. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, the only critique I had was some of the dialogue just was not as well put together as I would have liked. A lot of repetition and things like that. And then I think there might have been one point where I saw some really bad acting, and I was just like, oh, and it hurt me when it happened. And then I was just like, okay, I'm willing to look past it because everything else was so good. And it's such a well put together film. Everything about it is absolutely great. I really love the way they did certain things with camera angles and using a variety of different shooting techniques. One instance was the camera running, having the cameraman literally running and the camera's bouncing up and down. Another technique was at one point the camera was in the water, and it did the thing that was done in the movie Jaws, and I love this, and it was the water lens. You could just see above the water line and see the actor in front of the camera, and I thought, yes, that is genius. I love that technique. That is so good. So I was so excited to see those awesome techniques and just these weird different angles with the cameras and doing all these really cool things. They did a really bang-up job with this film. And I love the premise, the story. It definitely was one, when I saw the trailer, it caught my eye. instantly. When I saw it, I was like, I have to see this. And then when I saw M. Night Shyamalan's name attached to it, I said, I am going to see this. There is no half. There is no try. There is only do, as Yoda says. I said, I will see this movie, be it by hook or by crook. I'm going to see it. And we got to see it. And I was very, very impressed. Like I said, my only critique was the dialogue at the end of the day. But other than that, you couldn't have asked for a better movie. I mean, from everything from the setup to the ending twist. And it was a great ending twist. Like I said, I love the practicality of everything because it was really interesting. It was just very interesting. It was an interesting movie all around. I really would like to kind of read the book and just kind of see the difference between movie to book and see just how different it is. Just because there's a couple things I'd like to see about it. I definitely would like to see if the ending is how it is in the book. Because I know our ending we got in the film was much more concrete and much more, that's it, you made it. It just ties everything up with a nice, neat little bow. But yeah, so that's M. Night Shyamalan's movie, Old. Check it out in theaters now, today. And I'm going to, as I normally do on these episodes where we review films, I'm going to stand on my soapbox for just a moment, if I may. Folks, go out and watch a film in the theater. I know there's a lot of options nowadays where you can go and check it out online. You can pirate it, which is illegal. But you can do that. You can, they're putting movies on things like HBO Max now ahead of time where you have to pay like $20 to see it. And then I know some people will be like, oh, well, I'll wait till it comes on Netflix, or I'll go pick it up at Redbox, or any number of excuses to not go to the theater. Look, I know the theaters are expensive in their own right, but that's a business. They got to make money too. And there's just nothing like going to a theater and watching a movie. There's just something about it. The experience is unparalleled to anything else. So go out, support your local movie theater. Go out and, you don't have to buy popcorn or sodas or anything like that, candy, none of that. I didn't buy anything this time. It was the first time I've been to a movie in a while, and I didn't buy anything. Usually I will buy a big old popcorn, a big old soda, but you don't have to do that. Just go there and just see the movie. If we can pack these theaters with all of us going to these releases and stuff, we keep the movies open. We keep these people employed, and that's very important. That's very important. A lot of people working in theaters, this is their first job. They're teenagers, and this is where they work. Actually, this time at the theater, I saw somebody who had just graduated high school, and I was like, oh, she works here. So this is a job for people. This is their income we're talking about. So if you can afford it, depending on when you go, it might cost you $10 to $15 for a movie. And if it's just you alone, that's not that much to ask for. So go check it out if you can. Go to the movies, be there in person, enjoy yourself, have a good time, because they're there for you. That's what we want to see. We want to see people in the theater seats. It's so important. So go to the theaters. So now I'm getting off my soapbox. But that is going to do it for us today as we talk about the movie M. Night Shyamalan's Old. Go check it out in theaters as soon as you can. Get on down there and watch it. It's a movie you don't want to miss. I would have to rate it, if I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably say it's teetering at about a 7 or 8 out of 10. And my only reasoning for that is because of that big whole thing with the script and the dialogue and that. So that's the only reason I don't give it a 9 out of 10 or something like that. So we're going to say about 7 or 8 out of 10 is where I'm kind of keeping it. Maybe we'll say 7.5. Put it right in the middle for you. But that is going to do it for us today on episode 19 of the Terror Talks. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked what you heard or what you saw today, be sure to go hit that like, comment, and rate button, and of course the subscribe button. We want you guys to give us as much support as you possibly can, and we want to know what you guys like. If you didn't like something today, you can tell us that too by simply commenting below. You can shoot us a message on any of our social medias. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or you can send us an email to theterrortalks@gmail.com. Also, go check us out on all our listening platforms. We are on Spotify, Apple Music, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and so many other ones. Go check them all out. They're fantastic. Go check out our website. We are at www.theterrortalks.wordpress.com. You can go there. We upload all our episodes there. We've got a couple little other things on there too. We'll be posting things every once in a while. Maybe we'll do a blog. If you want to give us a little bit of extra love for us, we love a little extra love, and we ask you for it so much. You can go check out our Patreon. Here you can give us a little bit of extra support by subscribing to one of our mini packages. We have 3 packages, $1, $5, and $10, all giving you various perks. But this is just a way that you can receive our content and different types of bonus content as well, and help us be able to produce more great content for you guys. So if you can help us out that way, we would greatly appreciate it. Go check out our Patreon. It is The Terror Talks. We want you to go check out some of our friends over at the various other podcasts out there. Go check out our friends at Tales from the Krieps. They are a podcast that specializes in all things paranormal, supernatural, alien encounters, that type of thing. Go check them out. They're fantastic. The girls are down to earth and awesome. Love them to death. Never miss an episode. Go check out our friends over at the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. They're covering all things Universal Studios Orlando particularly, but they also do some things with Hollywood as well. And if you like them, you can check out their sister podcast, which is the Rush of Fear podcast, which covers all things to do with Halloween Horror Nights. But not just Halloween Horror Nights. They have a couple other extra spooky things happening out there as well. So go check them out. And then go check out our friends over at the Theme Park Duo. They're covering all the things out there on the West Coast. So they're covering Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood. They're covering Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party at Disneyland. They're covering Not Scary Farm. But then when it's not Halloween, they're also covering all of these same attractions during the day, as well as a variety of other ones. They're actually coming to visit over here in Orlando, I believe, this Halloween, so maybe we'll get to bump into them. And finally, before we say anything else, we want to thank you guys, our loyal fans, for listening and joining us on this show. We couldn't do it without you guys, without your support. You are what makes the show. We just sit here and talk and put out the things for you. But by you giving us support and showing us you really do care, that's what keeps us going. So please keep that up. We love your support. We can really tell that you guys care, and we love having you along for all of these rides. It is absolutely fantastic. We could not do it without you. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Terror Talks, talking about M. Night Shyamalan's movie, Old. We hope you will tune in with us next time, but until then, be safe, be good to each other, don't text and drive, and be excellent to each other. Take care, guys.